Namaste everyone. From virtual performances to learning online, the COVID-19 pandemic, which hit us all in late 2019 and early 2020, has completely changed the scenario for dance, dancers, and the entire world. I am Dr Sowmyashree Mayur Kaku, and today I will be presenting a summary of my study titled The Impact of COVID-19 Pandemic on Dance and Dancers. To begin with, let me introduce myself to all of you. I am a medical doctor who has pursued Ph.D. from the Department of Clinical Neurosciences and Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at NIMHANS, Bangalore, and currently work as a clinician researcher in the areas of autism and developmental disorders at St. John's Medical College Hospital. Apart from this, I am also a Bharatanatyam dancer and a Doordarshan artist in Bharatanatyam, trained in Carnatic music and currently pursuing guitar as well. I also have been a theatre artist in the past. Before I begin my study and present to you what I have found when I conducted my study, I would like to thank Nupura Brahmari, the entire team of the Shodha Sarani series, for giving me this opportunity to bring my work to all of you. So the objective of the study was to understand the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, not only on dance, but also on dancers. I wanted to explore what exactly are we all going through during these times and how the rapid change in circumstances have influenced us. To give you an explanation about how exactly I went about the study, I would like to start off with the study methodology. So this was a mixed method study, meaning that there was a quantitative component for the study and also a qualitative one. The study was conducted via Google Forms platform, where the questionnaire which I had prepared prior was uploaded to a Google Forms as a Google Form sheet, and then the link was shared across many platforms, including WhatsApp, email, Facebook, and Instagram. Voluntary consent was necessary for participants to get into the form and take part in the survey. And I would like to share at this point that there was only one participant who denied consent and did not participate in the study, but the rest of them gave consent and proceeded with participating in the study. In order to disseminate the study, what is called as snowballing, which is a technique of disseminating a study form or a study platform, was used. Snowballing basically means that when I sent the form to some of my friends, they could in turn send it to their friends and their friends. Or if I sent it to a dance guru, they could then send it to their students and their colleagues. So that is what is called as snowballing. So snowballing was the technique which was used for data collection. I did not collect any personal information about the participants, so therefore the data is anonymized. However, at the end of the survey, there was a column where participants could leave their email address in case they wished to hear back from me about the results which I found in this study. All the data were collected on an Excel sheet after it was entered into the Google Forms by the participants, which was then entered into SPSS, which is a software for statistical analysis of data. So I used the SPSS version 17 for data analysis. I'm not really sure how many dancers finally received the form and chose not to click into the link and proceed with the survey, but 137 dancers participated in my survey. So what exactly was the sample like? Who were these 137 dancers? So the form was filled by dancers aged as young as 12 years onwards to up till 69 years of age. So the mean age was 28.2 years with a standard deviation of 10.7. So which means most of my participants in the survey were between 18 years to 38 years of age on an average. That was the group which had the major representation in this survey. Of course, the participants were majorly from India, 118 of them in fact, but there were also participants from USA, Germany and Netherlands. If you look at from which states of India the participants were, predominantly they were participants who were from the southern part of India, Bangalore and Karnataka at large being the ones which were most represented, including districts like Davangere, Mangalore, Udupi, Belgaum, Bijapur and other states, Mysore were all participating in the survey. But other cities such as Chennai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Panaji in Goa, also there were many participants from these parts of the country. So, of the 137 participants who took part, 132 of them, that is the majority of the participants, were Bharatanatyam dancers. Of course, there were other dance forms as well which dancers were practicing, which included Kathak, Kuchipudi, Odissi, Mohiniyattam, Yakshagana, contemporary art and other forms of dance as well. Many of these were overlapping with Bharatanatyam, so there were people who practiced more than one form of dance, which is why the numbers. But predominantly, the survey was answered by dancers who were Bharatanatyam dancers. So all of these dancers practiced for many years, and if you can see from this particular pie chart, majority of them at least practiced for more than majority of them had at least more than 5 years of active practice years. So there were 19% of the sample who were dancing for 5 to 10 years actively, 32% who were practicing for 10 to 15 years, and 29.2% who were practicing for 15 to 25 years in the field of dance. Many of them were full-time dancers and a few of them were part-time, as in they also had other day jobs which could support them financially. The next question was to understand how the pandemic impacted dance practice. So if you can see here, pre-pandemic, majority of them were able to practice for 0 to 2 hours and 2 to 4 hours. But during the pandemic, if you can see, there's almost a 10% dip in people who are practicing for 2 to 4 hours and who are now practicing only for 0 to 2 hours in a day. This probably is because of the other responsibilities for them at home, which includes having to do work from home for their career front, or having to manage their family and take care of other family responsibilities. So how has the pandemic impacted dance and dancers? So most of them, as you can see here, 78.8% definitely felt that the pandemic has impacted us, and 15.3% felt that most likely that the pandemic has impacted all of us, which means it's a cumulative of more than 95% of them agreeing to the fact that the pandemic has definitely impacted dance and dancers, not in a very positive way. So then I explored what were the most important aspects that were affected when we talk about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there were some options which I had given, like how was your regular practice affected? How was your interaction and guidance with your guru and learning new items and practicing them at home? What was your level of motivation like? What kind of support did you receive from your dance mates? How were you managing your financial front in your life? How is your work-life balance? All of these questions were answered by the participants of the survey. And how did they feel about not having live performances? How did they feel about the workshops which were going on, and how did they feel about the overall knowledge exchange that was happening during the pandemic? And if you can see in all of these bar charts, most of them definitely felt that all of these were affected in a positive or a negative way. I think the ones which were most affected were interaction and guidance by our gurus. Definitely, we were not able to go to physical classes. And the second most reported to be affected were live performances, followed by knowledge exchange, owing to the scenario that we were all stuck at home during lockdown and even otherwise, and had to maintain social distancing, because of which we were unable to attend live performances and have an active physical knowledge exchange. So if I have to give a summary of what were the areas that were most affected, as you can see here, 114 out of the 137 people felt that interaction and guidance by the guru was one of the most affected areas, following which live performances, which was 129 of the 137 participants, reported that this was greatly impacted and disrupted their ability to pursue dance and as dancers to project their art to the world. Of course, financial aspects and work-life balance were also reported high, along with lack of motivation, which were all reported by more than 90 people of the 137 people that took the survey. Apart from this, when I looked at what were the other aspects that the participants of the survey have reported to have gotten affected, were that there was not enough availability of resource material. Of course, there was an enormous boom of the online content during the first lockdown itself and the pandemic in the year 2020. But what about resource materials? What were the resource materials which were available online, and how were these accessed? How were these accessible for people across the country and across the world, for that matter, during the pandemic? And of course, not being satisfied with online teaching was one of the most important reasons which was stated. And the competitiveness which you have when you're in a classroom setting, because you have support from your peers, you have a lot of one-on-one learning with your guru. So the competitive atmosphere which you would have, the discipline of a classroom setting which you would have, was completely disrupted, and of course has not been available for more than a year or a year and a half now because of the pandemic. The fineness of dance when you're doing it in the classroom setting, especially because your guru is able to observe and give you subtle corrections, and even otherwise as a dance guru yourself, being able to get into the zone of choreography, of creating art itself, and the fineness of doing that in a formal setting versus doing it from home definitely has impacted dance itself, and also the future dancers who are upcoming in the field. Many of them, in fact, mentioned mental health during this period, especially because there were death of loved ones, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 infections. Apart from this, the negative pressure and decreased self-esteem induced by social media platforms, excessive viewing of social media and social media content in many of them, affected mental health in a negative way. A lot of them, at least for those dancers who did not live in tier 1 cities of the country, had to face network and technical difficulties, which also threw enormous challenge at them to pursue classes with their teachers, even though it was online training. Having space for practice at home was extremely challenging for many of them. They were living in nuclear family setups, living in joint family setups and extended family setups, which gave an enormous hurdle to have space available at the convenient time of the guru to be able to practice at home, especially when you're living in an apartment kind of a setup where you're living on a higher floor and you're not able to practice because the lower floors would hear would get sound of the practice session itself. So space for practice was another big hurdle for many dancers. Apart from this, the ability to have an audience-artist connection definitely was lacking, and this was a challenge for many of them. Like I said, I also tried to see if dance was a full-time profession for people who took the survey, and 54% of the participants had dance as a full-time profession, and another 46% had a part-time job. So the part-time job varied. I have not put that up here because there were more than 50 other kinds of jobs which people were doing, including being a student, an engineer, doctor, YouTuber, a chef, Instagrammer, physiotherapist, school teacher, and many more such professions. So even though the majority of the people who participated in the survey were full-time dancers, many of them also were pursuing dance while having a part-time profession or another full-time profession while pursuing dance itself. During the pandemic, like I said, there was a boom in social media content, and when I looked at what were the most commonly used social media platforms and sources of online content for dancers during the pandemic, as you can see here, YouTube was one of the most popular online platform, where 78.8% of them used YouTube for content. 100 out of the 137, which is around 73% of them, used Instagram, following which Facebook was the next important source of online content. But as you can also see here, WhatsApp seems to be a little bit popular which was reported by a few. Twitter, another important one. Newspaper and individual sources. Almost 53 people said that there were individual sources which were shared with them, which was an important source of online content. Of course, 84% of the participating sample had attended live performances, workshops, series, or on any of these social media platforms, of which, as you can see here, YouTube was the most popular one, following which it was Instagram and Facebook. Most of them, out of these 84% of people who said that they had attended live shows, live workshops, live programs and series, had attended from anywhere between 5 live shows to more than 20 live shows online in the last year. One of the important things which many people reported as being useful because of the online performances is that students were given an opportunity by the gurus to perform in these live shows which were being conducted online. But of course, when I checked in the survey about whether they think stage performance is better than an online performance or a live show which they were looking at through any of these online social media platforms, as you can see here, a score of 1 means definitely online is best, and a score of 5 means definitely live performances in the stage is the best. So as you can see here, 71.5%, which was 98 people out of the 137 who participated in this survey, felt like live performances, being on the stage physically, having that kind of an interactive bond with the audience and showing your art to the world from that stage definitely was the best way forward, and not exactly through online performances and online shows. I also asked them, would they want to have this kind of a scenario post-COVID? So let us say COVID ends in this December, and then we look at how we want to use social media platforms for post-COVID dance, and how we can use it for dance and take it forward as dancers. And as you can see here, only 31% were definitely sure that post-COVID social media use must be there. We must pursue these forms live shows, online shows and workshops should continue post-COVID online. 25% of them definitely had a no, and 43.8% were not really sure whether the scenario should continue as it is, or maybe we'll really have to go back and they would want to have a physical scenario like the pre-COVID times. Now I will talk a little bit about the data itself, some statistical analysis and what came out to be significant, what were the variables which were significantly associated with each other and correlated to give me this kind of an output. So as I said, I used SPSS platform to do data analysis, and I have only highlighted some of the most important ones which can give us a sneak peek into the exact problems which dance is facing, which dancers are facing during the pandemic. So as you can see here, as we age, like I said in my sample, there were ages between 12 years to 69 years. So as we age, people have reported financial aspect to be a significant problem. So P was around 0.001, which is statistically significant, and which just means that in younger ages, financial issues were not reported, obviously, because they are students, they have family and parents to support them probably. But in older ages, you're on your own, you have your school, you have your students as a dance guru maybe, and the financial challenges are much more. So age was correlating with the financial issues which were reported. And again, age also correlated significantly with knowledge exchange. So knowledge exchange was more commonly reported by people who were on the older spectrum of the age. I don't have a cutoff to say 28 years or 40 years or 60 years, but it is like a linear relationship where the older the age, more the number of people reported that knowledge exchange was a significant hampered domain in dance and during learning of dance during the pandemic. Financial aspects affected full-time dancers predominantly. So I tried to compare between full-time dancers and other people who had also other professions as part-time or full-time jobs. So people who were full-time dancers were more financially affected than the others. I also looked at people who reported to have mental health issues, where they reported that they faced burnout during the pandemic. And this positively correlated with the people who attended online shows at P of 0.03, people who attended number of live shows. So live shows here, and the difference between online shows and live shows is that the numbers. So online show was just whether they attended any online program, but live shows was the number of programs they attended. Like I mentioned, between 5 to above 20 programs. So the more the number of live shows they attended, the more burnt out they felt. The more number of online workshops they attended, the more burnt out they felt. And of course, people who had family support were the ones who reported lesser burnout. Students who were living alone, people who did not have extended family support with their work-life balance or to take care of their children or to provide them that kind of dedicated dance time, self-time, were the ones who significantly reported to have burnout. So definitely those who had family support during the pandemic, kind of on the mental health scale, seem to have done well than those who did not have family support, obviously. I also explored what was an advantage during this pandemic. Of course, we have all these challenges, but what was that was advantageous? So as you can see, people have reported that they got adaptable. They learned the skill of adaptability, changing, staying at home, not being able to meet peers and friends and family. Learning technology, something which we all definitely can say that we have self-learned a lot of things. We have self-taught technology to a very great extent in the last year or so. And we definitely did not have to commute anywhere, so we were having more practice time because the commute time had gone down. We were able to attend more workshops because we physically did not have to be anywhere. We could do it from the comfort of our homes. Geography was not an issue, so there was more exposure to artists across the globe, across various time zones, across variety of expertise from different countries from the world. And this opened up enormous knowledge to a lot of us who did not have access to all these things earlier to the pandemic. Many of us also reported that we became more disciplined because we had to juggle a lot of jobs at home in various fronts. We got more disciplined, we learned time management, we respected time, we gave that dedicated time for dance, dedicated time for work, and tried to do our best in whatever we can. And this in turn led to enormous self-development. But again, looking at what were the ones which were reported to have worst impacted us, which is worrying us, were the financial aspects. Most of the participants were worried what would happen if the pandemic continued like this for a couple of more years, which would impact them extremely badly in the financial front. What would happen to the younger kids where online classes are not really effective, because you can have online classes for advanced dancers, for advanced students, but younger kids who are at a primary or a middle school level, who are just getting into dance, who still haven't learned the subtle aspects, the nuances of the art itself, how do we reach out to these younger kids was a big question for many of the dance gurus. People who are actually perceiving dance-related degrees were worried because their dissertation work, their internships, their practical work was all being affected. So would it be possible to structure these degree studies in a different way or tweak it in a certain way that we can do it in a little bit of eased out fashion to be done at home, especially during the time of the pandemic? Another important worry is to see how long can we sustain our work-life balance. Of course, we're exhausted with shuffling multiple jobs, being at home, and how long can we do this if the pandemic does not come down soon? What about all the overpriced workshops? Of course, as you know, and as we have seen in the survey, financial aspects has hit all of us big time. And because of this, there is a price hike in some of the online workshops and resource material that are available. So how are we going to afford it if the prices are being hiked? So overpriced workshops and online training platforms was another important issue. Social media being saturated with performances, workshops, series, and content. How are we going to deal with this kind of saturation? It's huge. The content out there is huge, and we are unable to cope up with it, was what many of them reported. What about government being able to give us benefits? Is the government really thinking about us? Are they doing anything for dancers? That was a big concern. And how can we set up an artist support system to hold each other's hands and give a shoulder of support for each other, especially during these difficult times, was another concern and worry which many of them brought up. So when I actually asked about how government can help, many of them had suggestions, especially in the form of having scholarships. Maybe the government can have a competitive method in which dancers and artists at various levels, from the junior most to the most senior artists, could apply to government for these scholarships on a competitive basis probably, and the government can then support them during this pandemic time. Can the government organizations, stakeholder organizations, and artist support groups create relief funds, especially for dancers who are really in need and are at a huge financial loss, to be able to support them, their team, their students, to take the art form forward? There was also a concern which was raised by a couple of people who participated in the survey who were not from metro cities, who said that we do not have internet, we do not have opportunities which the people in the metro cities have. So can these relief funds be directed a little bit towards people who are not in the main front of the scene, maybe who are in these tier 2 and tier 3 cities of our country, who probably need more help than the ones who are in the metro cities. Can the government create a job portal or create opportunities for dancers to pursue something from the government front itself, to teach dance or to conduct workshops or to have performances in some way, to in turn, in an indirect way, support them financially, was one of the suggestions which was given. Creating resources online about workshops which are upcoming, the various resource portals which are available for dancers at various stages of dance training itself or dance expertise, could access, could read and could learn from these resource portals, was one amazing suggestion that was given. What if all artists took vaccination and then we start off having a live performance? This was a question which was raised by a few of them, saying that similar to how we see that gyms are being opened with a 50% capacity, swimming pools are being opened, competitive swimming training and other forms of competitive training have all been given a green signal to go ahead and practice. Similarly, can there be a similar rule which government can give for artists, especially dancers, to have live performances with a 50% capacity with people who have gotten themselves vaccinated? Or can we have classes, live classes, and all dance schools across the country open with 50% capacity and alternating their students so that gurus also can overcome these financial issues which they are going through? Of course, platforms to perform live, online, or whatever way possible, could the government support that, was one of the questions which was raised and suggestion that was given. As a mental health professional myself, I was extremely curious to know how the pandemic has impacted mental health of dancers. So in the work front itself, I see children who have gone through the pandemic and who are facing enormous difficulties because of staying at home, not being able to meet their peers, not being able to go to school. So I was extremely curious to see the scenario of the dance itself and how dancers through all these difficult times have coped, and or if they have not been able to cope, what are the most common mental health difficulties they are facing. And as you can see here, lack of motivation, having low mood, poor physical health. Of course, many of us might have gotten infected with the COVID-19 infection ourselves. So having poor physical health because of that, grieving the loss of loved ones. The second wave has been brutal in India, and I know many of my colleagues and friends who have lost a close or an extended family member to this pandemic. And similarly, even dancers have lost their loved ones to the pandemic and are grieving during these times, which in turn has affected their ability to learn, their ability to put their best foot forward during the pandemic, and not having support to grieve, especially because we are all social distancing, not being able to meet friends or meet other family members to share our grief itself is a huge setback. Frustration because of the prolonged nature of the pandemic. The last 1 year has been extremely brutal. Feeling tired all the time, similar to having lack of interest in daily activities, which is called as anhedonia, lack of interest in your routine activities, and having a child with you, having your own kid, and your kid not being able to cope during the pandemic, and seeing problems in your children or in your other family members as an impact of the pandemic definitely has affected mental health of dancers. I think it's a really sad scenario, and I would really want to push the dancers across the world, or whoever is viewing this video, to support your peers during these difficult times. If possible, set up a support system for yourself, for your peers, for your family and friends during the pandemic, to be able to hold each other and come out of this difficult situation in a better way. So these are some excerpts from the qualitative part of data which I collected. So if you look at what were not good, this is from one of the participants of the survey who said there is necessity for dancers to become relevant and accessible, and this has impacted what we create, how we create, and how often we present. There is an overwhelming number of performances which are not different from one another. Of course, this again talks about social media saturation and how we are not able to cope with it. Another dancer said, dancing under the guru and performing live, which in turn builds a great level of strength and stamina, can never be replaced by online learning or performance. Absolutely agree. When I explored what were the positives, what were the advantages of the pandemic situation, a couple of interesting excerpts here. I'll read it now. They said, the ability to watch many senior dancers whom we wouldn't have had the opportunity to watch otherwise. Like I said, globalization, digital media has brought all of us together and given us opportunity to attend and see many of the senior dancers from across the globe just at our fingertips. So this is a huge boost for learning, and this is definitely considered as one of the advantage by many of the participants. Another participant said that it became truly global. Audiences, viewership were not limited to the venue, city, or even country of the origin of the performance. And some excerpts from what the government or the community can do to support each other: create enough safe opportunities for artists to rebuild their performing careers, and for Rasikas to watch their favorite artists safely. Another person said, to create, extend financial aid and performance opportunities, particularly to artists and technicians in non-metro cities. Another person said, especially those that are full-time dancers that earn their living from performances and classes, the government should make sure them and their students have access to the technology that is required. Government cultural festivals can also be held online, apart from in some way supporting them financially as well. I will be happy to answer any questions if you have. You can write to me. This is my email address, which is sowmeey@gmail.com. My number is 9611020419. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions regarding this particular survey which I have conducted for dance and dancers. Please do not hesitate if you have any clarifications and if you have any collaborations you have in mind. One of the most important things that I believe is collaboration without competition. We are not here to compete with each other. We are here to progress in the area of dance and support each other as dancers. So I will be more than happy if anybody wants to write to me and have any ideas, or if you want me to help you out or participate in anything that you are doing in any way. I would like to thank my guru, Dr. Mala Shashikant, for supporting me through this endeavor, for giving her thoughts when I initially came up with this idea and prepared the survey. Manorama ma'am, thank you so much for helping me disseminate it, helping me to reach out to the dancers out there. Akshita, one of my colleagues in dance who is a Ph.D. student in astrophysics, who is helping me out with data analysis and interpretation. Priyanka, another of my colleague who's a psychologist, who's also helping me out with data analysis and interpretation. All you dancers out there, thank you so much for participating in this survey and sharing your thoughts and experiences so that we can present this to you back and see how we can help each other and support each other during these difficult times. I would like to conclude by saying Gurubhyo Namaha. Dhanyavad all of you for your kind attention. Namaste.